Seduction has nothing to do with how you look. Cleopatra, by most historical accounts, was not considered conventionally beautiful. She spoke 9 languages, studied philosophy, and understood something most people in every room she entered did not, that the deepest human desire isn't for pleasure. It's to feel seen, chosen, and uniquely understood. Julius Caesar fell. Mark Antony abandoned a military empire for her, not because she was the most beautiful woman in the world, because she made them feel in her presence like the most significant man in it. She spoke their language, literally, as the only Ptolemaic ruler to bother learning Egyptian and several others, and she directed her full, formidable intelligence at understanding exactly what each person she encountered most deeply needed to feel. Robert Greene spent years studying figures like her, across centuries, cultures, and wildly different contexts, looking for the repeatable principles underneath what most people dismiss as mystery or luck. This is the art of seduction. Picture this. You've watched someone walk into a room and within 10 minutes hold the attention of everyone in it, without raising their voice, without obvious effort, without doing anything you could point to and say, "That's it, that's the thing." And you've probably also watched someone else try equally hard to be noticed, louder, funnier, more insistent, and produce the opposite effect, quietly pushing the room away. The gap between those two people isn't confidence exactly. It isn't attractiveness in any conventional sense. It isn't even charisma as most people understand the word. Some vague, unlearnable magnetism you either have or you don't. His answer has almost nothing to do with the seducer and almost everything to do with the person they're sitting across from. Most people assume seduction is about what you project, your attractiveness, your confidence, the version of yourself you put forward. Greene's argument is almost the opposite. Every person alive carries a void, something unmet, something quietly longed for, something the ordinary texture of their life doesn't quite deliver. Recognition they don't receive at work. Excitement their daily routine is long since drained out. The feeling of being genuinely interesting to another person rather than simply present. Greene's central argument is that seduction isn't about projecting your own attractiveness onto another person. It's about identifying their specific void and becoming, temporarily and deliberately, the thing that fills it. This is why the most seductive people in history rarely seem to be trying. They weren't broadcasting themselves. They were studying their target, asking questions, observing carefully, noticing what the other person needed that nobody else in the room was paying attention to, then providing exactly that. Greene describes Casanova as the clearest example of this principle in action. Contrary to his reputation, Casanova wasn't primarily known for his physical appeal or his wealth. He was known for making every woman he encountered feel as though, in the specific hours they spent together, she was the most singular, fascinating, and worthy of attention person who had ever existed. He achieved this not through performance, but through genuine curiosity, by asking questions nobody else thought to ask, and listening, actually listening, to the answers. The moment another person feels genuinely seen in your presence, they begin moving toward you. Not because you've attracted them, because you've given them something far rarer than attraction, the experience of actually being noticed. Greene identifies 9 archetypes in this book, but the taxonomy isn't really the point. What matters is the principle underneath it. And the clearest way to see that principle is to look at 2 types that seem like opposites. The siren operates through excess, mystery, danger, theatricality, an atmosphere so charged and otherworldly that the person drawn in feels temporarily lifted out of their ordinary life entirely. The siren's power comes from distance, from the sense that something extraordinary is just within reach, always slightly further away than it seems. The psychological gap being exploited is boredom, the dull, routine flatness of a life that has stopped surprising anyone, including the person living it. The natural operates through the complete opposite impulse. Spontaneity, apparent guilelessness, the disarming sense that this person has no agenda, no calculation, no performance running, just pure, easy, unguarded presence. The natural makes people lower their defenses not through excitement, but through safety, exploiting a different gap entirely. The exhaustion of always being on guard, always performing, always managing how you appear. Same outcome. Another person drawn irresistibly closer. Completely different entry points. The siren finds the person who is bored and craves danger. The natural finds the person who is tired and craves rest. This is what Greene means when he says, the art is never about the seducer. It's about reading which gap is actually open in the person sitting across from you, and becoming exactly what that gap is waiting for. The most revealing section in this book isn't about what seducers do. It's about what anti-seducers do. And the traits are so recognizable, they're almost uncomfortable to read. Anti-seducers are needy. They pursue too visibly, too urgently, without enough patience to let the other person come forward on their own terms. They make their desire legible too early, which shifts the dynamic. Once another person knows they're already wanted, the mystery collapses. The pursuit becomes obligation, and the pull reverses entirely. Greene describes this as the anti-seducer's fatal mistake. They are so focused on what they need from the interaction that they never stop to understand what the other person is actually experiencing inside it. The anxiety shows in the urgency, in the over-explanation, in the slight desperation, visible just underneath the effort to seem relaxed. Picture 2 people entering the same social situation with the same goal. One moves with ease through the room, seemingly more interested in listening than in impressing, comfortable with silence, untroubled by whether they're being noticed. The other laughs slightly too hard, pivots their story slightly too fast to seem relatable, fills every gap with more of themselves. Both have plenty to offer. Only one of them will leave having drawn anyone genuinely closer. The paradox Greene returns to repeatedly. The less you appear to need the approval of the person in front of you, the more powerfully you attract it. Not as a trick, but as a structural reality. People are drawn toward whoever seems to have something to offer, and repelled by whoever seems to need something in return. There's a principle Greene returns to as the thread running through every case study in this book, from Cleopatra to Casanova to the political seductions of John F. Kennedy. Seduction operates in the space between expectation and reality. Every person walks through life with a story they tell themselves about who they are and what they deserve. Often, a story slightly diminished by years of routine and compromise. The seducer's specific art is stepping into that story, not as themselves, but as a figure the other person has been subconsciously scripting for years without realizing it. Kennedy understood this intuitively in a political context. His press conferences weren't primarily about policy. They were performances of a specific kind of possibility. The feeling that something vivid and significant was happening, that the people in the room were witnessing something that mattered. People who left those rooms weren't just politically persuaded. They felt for a brief stretch of time more important themselves for having been there. This is why Greene insists the art has nothing to do with manipulation in the cheap sense of the word. The most effective seducers throughout history weren't lying to people. They were showing people a version of themselves, a fuller, more vivid, more exciting version, that the ordinary circumstances of life had long since stopped reflecting back to them. That is what makes this book genuinely unsettling, even after multiple reads. The void Greene describes, the need to feel chosen, significant, and uniquely understood, exists in every person reading this right now, in exactly the way he says it does. Somewhere in the last few minutes, a specific interaction probably came to mind. Someone who drew you in without obvious effort, or a moment where you pushed harder than you should have and felt the room pull away. Greene's argument isn't that seduction is something to deploy on unsuspecting people. It's that understanding the psychology, the void, the timing, the strategic withdrawal, changes how you show up in every room, every conversation, every relationship where being genuinely compelling actually matters. If this gave you something worth sitting with, subscribe, because the next video on this channel might be the next piece of the psychology nobody ever laid out for you this clearly. See you in the next one.